Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing something a little different. We're making Gim Bap, which is a Korean style sushi. First, we're going to need 2 cups of white rice, and we're going to be using the short grain rice. That makes the sushi a little bit better and easier to stick together. Once the rice is cooked, we're going to transfer it into a bowl so it can cool, and we're going to be adding our sesame oil to it, and we're also going to be adding our salt. Now we're going to start off with like a half a teaspoon of salt, and then you can always taste it and you can always add more after that. It's very difficult to, you can't take out salt, so you should start small and then add more if you need to. This is the meat that I'm going to use, and I'm cutting it into small strips. I'm using top round, but basically you want to use like either this or something very, very thinly sliced. You can even use skirt steak is probably the best for this. As you can see, I'm cutting them into tiny strips. I think I probably should have cut them a little thinner, as you'll see later. So once we've cut meat into strips, we're going to put it into a bowl, and we're going to add our brown sugar. And we're also going to be adding our shoyu or soy sauce to this mix. And also a little bit of sesame oil. Instead of using fresh cloves of garlic, I like to use minced garlic from a bottle. But you can use whatever you want. Probably fresh garlic is probably better. And then we're going to mix it around and mix it up really well. And then we're going to let it sit and marinate for a while. And then in a pan, preheated with oil, we're going to start to fry up our steaks. You want to try to probably marinate it a little bit longer than I did. I marinated it for about maybe half an hour to 45 minutes. But if you can marinate it overnight, that's probably the best. You want to cook them until they kind of look like this. So our next ingredient is a pickled radish that you can probably find at Asian supermarkets everywhere. What we're going to do is we're going to be cutting these into very, very thin strips. Like the other ingredients, it's better to cut them really small so that we can add more if we need to, rather than cut them too big and then have to take out. So our next ingredient is this vegetable tempura or fish cake. I was unable to find the Korean fish cake, but I'm using this one, which is kind of like a local Japanese style fish cake. I think it works just fine. What I'm doing here is I'm also cutting these into small strips. As you can see, they are a little bit thick width-wise. As you can see, it's probably a little too thick for the sushi. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting these in half. Like with the other ingredients, it's better to get something that is a little smaller than what we need. Next comes my carrot, and I'm gonna say this right now, but I am very sorry. I am not very good at cutting vegetables. But anyway, we are also going to slice our carrots into very, very small, fine little sticks. Especially for the carrots, because of the way we're going to be seasoning them, you want them in very, very, very thin little sticks like this. This is about the size that you're looking for. Once we have cut the carrots, we're going to add about a half teaspoon of salt, and we're just going to be mixing it in there. And we're going to leave it on the side because it's going to start to sweat, and water is going to start to form out of it. Once we're ready though, we're going to put it into a pan that is pre-greased, pre-oiled. We're gonna first we're gonna take out drain all the water. We're gonna saute them for about a minute. What we want to do is we want to saute them until they're just a little bit cooked. We're not gonna try to get them soft. We don't want them soft. We still want a little bit of crunch to them. Next, we're gonna be working with our spinach. And so in a pot of boiling water, we're going to be adding our spinach leaves to it. This is only about half of what I'm going to actually be using for the sushi. What we're going to do is we're going to blanch it for about 30 seconds. We don't want to overcook it. That's probably the worst thing that we could do. So we're going to leave it in there for about 30 seconds, and then we're going to take it out. And when we take it out, we're going to put it in a strainer, and then we're going to run it under some cold water so that it stops cooking. Okay, so once the spinach has fully cooled, we're going to wring it out. We're going to wring out the water completely and put it into a bowl so we can add our ingredients to it. This is the sesame oil that I'm adding. And I just want to let you know too that this is only half of the amount of spinach that I'm using. I actually added more to it later because this is a lot of salt. That's about a half teaspoon of salt. I added more spinach to it later, and this is the minced garlic that I'm adding. And then after we add all of our ingredients together, we're going to mix it up, and we're going to add this to the side of the ingredients that we're going to be using for our sushi. So next we have our egg. This is 3 eggs and we've scrambled it. We want to put it into a non-stick pan, and we're just going to cook it like an omelet. We want to try to flip it so that it stays in one piece, and hopefully I can do it here. Oh, well, I mean, I tried. Anyway, once it cools down, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting it into tiny strips again, very similar to the other ingredients. This is going to be used for our sushi as well, so we want to try to cut this like the other ingredients as thin as possible, probably about this size. This is what we want it to look like. Now comes the fun part, or at least I think it's the fun part. We're going to be rolling our sushi. As you can see, I'm putting the shiny side of the seaweed down on our sushi mat. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking our pre-seasoned rice, and I'm going to be taking about maybe 3/4 cup of it, and I'm going to be placing it on the seaweed. I've wet my hands, and it's probably best to do with your hands, but what I'm doing is I'm evening out the rice, and I'm trying to get it to the edges of the seaweed as much as possible. So that's how it should look. I've left a 2-inch margin on the top, as you can see. Now it's time to start putting in our ingredients. So the first ingredient that we're going to be putting in is our meat. And as you can see, like I said earlier, I probably cut the meat a little too thick. You probably want to cut it a little thinner. The next ingredient that I'm going to be putting in is going to be the fish cake. So we're going to be placing that on our sushi as well. And then the next ingredient is our pickled radishes. This is going to be a lot. This is going to be a huge sushi, so we want to try to pack the ingredients as close together as possible. The next ingredient is going to be our egg. And if you want to do it for aesthetic purposes, you don't want to put the egg next to the pickled radish because it's the same color, so you want to put it somewhere away from it. And then the next thing that we're going to be putting in is our carrots. And so we're going to be putting a lot. So you can see why we cut our carrots very, very, very thin. And finally, we're going to be putting in our spinach. And because our spinach is seasoned very well, we want to try to put a healthy amount of spinach in there. And this is where we actually roll our sushi. So we're going to get the end of the sushi mat and we're going to squeeze it. We're going to squeeze it really tight because what we don't want to happen is we don't want to cut the sushi down the road and things fall out. So we want to try to squeeze it as much as possible together so that everything stays together. Then we're going to roll it. And there you go. There's our Gim Bap. We're going to start to cut it, but we're going to cut it with a very, very sharp knife. We're going to cut the top off because that's probably something you don't want to serve. And then we're going to start cutting the sushi. You can cut it very thin like this, or you can cut it actually a little thicker like this, which I prefer the little thicker route. But like I said, we're going to be cutting it with a very sharp knife because we have to cut through all the ingredients and the seaweed. But there you go. There's your finished Gim Bap. Thanks for watching.